Totally Killer is a time travel horror comedy where a teenager goes back to the 1980s to save her mum from a mass serial killer. It's Final Girls meets Happy Death Day in a Back to the Future package. So let's blast to the past. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dad. Daddy-o. Hey, Daddy-o, how's it going?
Honestly, Daddy-o sounds less suspicious, in the 80s at least, than Mamacita does.
Yes.
Yes. Like, if the main character was Hispanic, maybe it wouldn't have felt as suspicious. But Kiernan Shipka, pretty white, so stuck out
Yes.
as being a bit out of place. Yes, we're here today, everyone, to look at a new movie that just came out this past weekend, at least at the time of recording. But I think this will be out later this week. We're looking at Totally Killer, the new Amazon Prime movie, which, as soon as I saw the trailer, I said, "Oh, this is like the Final Girls and Happy Death Day had a baby, and mixed it with, I guess, a bit of Back to the Future." And that's what this is. So, like, tonally, I just knew what it was trying to be immediately. But yeah, it's about a teen girl played by Kiernan Shipka, who you might know as Sabrina from The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Horror movie wise, she was in The Black Coat's Daughter, aka February, which we did a good probably 6 years ago now. At this point, it's been a while. But yeah, so she's got a little bit of horror cred attached to her already, which is nice.
That's true.
So it basically goes back in time to the 80s when all of her mum's friends were murdered by a serial killer who's called the Sweet 16 Killer, because he stabs all of his victims 16 times when they're 16 years old. So that's the basic premise. So there's a lot of fish out of water stuff. There's a lot of try to fix things in the past and change stuff. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do, and we'll give you warning before we get into the spoilers. But that is the basic gist of it. So after we've recorded a few weird oddities, mostly that Tim picked, we're back to a new release, one that we could access obviously easily without going to the theater. So, Tim, how did you feel about Totally Killer?
So I wasn't super excited about this one coming in. I didn't right off the bat, it's a very easy premise to get. It is Back to the Future meets a slasher horror movie, which, it isn't a bad premise, but, this is, over the last couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of these, like 80s comedy meets horror, shtick, which, I don't know, some of the returns have been better, than others. And I don't know, I feel like that's not a bad premise to have, but, if you do something like this, you have to make sure that your whole movie is not just the premise. Like, you have to actually make a good movie. You can't just sell it on, hey, isn't this wacky premise alone pretty fun? Which I feel like, with these high concept premises, it's easy to do, to just, kind of have this wacky thing and then just go along with it. And then, like I said, the trailer didn't do a ton for me. So, like, I wanted to see it, but I wasn't going in being like, yeah, like, I'm super pumped for this. So I got to say, I was pleasantly surprised. I actually thought this was really good. It worked for me. The premise is fun enough, and I was again I would say it is definitely more of a horror comedy than it is just like a horror movie, which can always be a little dicey as well. But the comedy worked a lot for me, and it didn't rely, I feel like, on the very easy thing of just like the time travel, like, oh, young millennial kid being back in the past and being like, oh, what's this thing, or having like saying a bunch of stupid future stuff, and people being like, what are you talking about? But actually it felt like a lot of the comedy was like character based, and it worked. And the characters were really likable in this, and the horror stuff definitely felt like maybe a little secondary, but I thought they still did a good job with it. Like, I liked the killer, I liked the premise of it. It was fun trying to think of who it was, which eventually I did. I forget how far into the movie it was, but I did guess who the killer was. Um, so I give myself a little pat on the back. I like that.
Well, you feel better or worse that I also guessed it.
Well, I'll just give myself some credit that my intelligence is rubbing off on you. So,
yes, of course, yes.
I like that they didn't like go too into the weeds of some of like the time travel bits and stuff. Like they weren't really focused on like why is how is she time traveling, like how does this time machine work and blah blah blah, like all this stuff. Like I like that it's like no, like that's not the focus of the story. The focus is going in the past and trying to save her mom and her friends and stuff. And no, I just there's probably like little gripes here and there. Like it's not a perfect movie by any means, but I had a lot of fun with this. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm as positive as you. Like, I don't dislike the movie, but to me, this is very much the epitome of just a decent streaming movie that I'm going to forget existed in a couple of weeks. I actually do think it kind of is just the premise and not much more. I don't think it has the backbone that, like, say, Happy Death Day does. Like, one of the reasons why Happy Death Day is such a good movie to me is because the main character has such a great arc and, like, really evolves because of what they go through in the movie. And I think for me, I was actually feeling quite positive when the movie started because I felt like, okay, it's setting up all this stuff in present day and we're going to meet younger versions of a lot of these characters and stuff like that, and we're learning some details of these murders that are going to be important when she goes back in time and all that stuff. And then she goes back in time, and probably the most fun I had in this movie was Kiernan Shipka's like interactions in the first like maybe 20 to 30 minutes of her being in the past, because it played a little differently, because like you said, the jokes could have easily been she says something futuristic to them and they're like, oh, you're weird. Instead it was more she tries to gauge what she should say in the time period and overcompensates at times and comes off weird in different ways, and that felt more interesting to me. And I think her reactions to just how certain things were in the 80s was probably the most fun I had. The problem is that after that point, I don't think it really evolved too much. Obviously, there's like things that happen, and there's there's kills and there's people to save and there's all these other things going on. But for me, it never really felt like it got out of first gear, and I never felt like the stakes went up throughout the movie like they're supposed to. And the movie openly references Back to the Future multiple times because the main character uses it to describe what she's doing. She's like, if you see Back to the Future, well, I'm basically Marty McFly, I'm doing that right now. And I think one of the references they make to Back to the Future, and this is even in the trailer, so this is not even close to spoiler territory, is in the trailer there's a moment where she brings up Back to the Future, and then someone says, in reference to her, in reference to the fact that Marty McFly in that movie has to like get his parents back together or he's going to disappear. Someone says, no, that movie got it wrong. It doesn't work like that. You won't disappear if you somehow mess up your parents getting together. And I'm not complaining that that's not what this movie's about, because that's not what the movie wants to be about, and that's fine. But it felt weird to point that out to me, because one of the reasons why Back to the Future feels like it has huge stakes the entire time is because he's got this ticking time clock where he has to solve this problem before his time runs out, and it gives that movie so much momentum. And it was one of the things that this movie, and this is something that I feel with so many of these streaming movies, is that I just don't feel much momentum in the story. It just kind of feels like it's, I don't know, it's very lackadaisical in its pacing, with the way it just kind of like, oh, it's time for this bit, it's time for this bit. I never feel like I'm being propelled or that engaged through the story. So it's kind of that thing where I think it's a reasonably enjoyable time and thing to have on, and I think there's moments of enjoyment, but I never really cared about anyone that was being saved. I never really cared that much about most of the characters, and a lot of the things that I thought they were setting up at the start that we're going to change or we're going to see different versions of in the past, it all just felt a bit undercooked to me by the end, and the way they kind of handled that stuff. So like, I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly watchable, but like, if you compare it to the, this is effectively its own little subgenre now with Happy Death Day, Final Girls, and stuff like that. And I think those two are much better than this. I think this is a case of it doesn't have its own spin on it, because a lot of the things in this are played out at this point. We've done meta horror for decades now. We've done 80s time travel-esque horror for a while, right? That's what Final Girls is. I mean, they're getting to the movie Last Action Hero style, but they're still effectively going back to the 80s. So I've seen movies poke fun at those things. I've seen movies poke fun at the differences between the 80s and now, and all the things that would crop up from those jokes. You know, we've seen this tone in other movies before, so it feels like it's perfectly fine, but it also feels like it's this derivative thing that's coming at the tail end. Like everything feels like, oh, I've seen everything this movie's done before, and I've seen most of it done better. So it's okay. That's where I'd sum up.
I think it's interesting to compare it to Final Girls because that's not one that immediately jumped out at me. But I can see like the comparison you're making, like, you know, like the obvious ones I was thinking of, like, was the, you know, just the other movies that are, hey, 80s comedy premise plus, you know, horror, which is like, you know, Happy Death Day and Freaky, and, you know, now this.
Yeah, Freaky's definitely in that subgenre. I think Final Girls stuck out to me a lot because it's about someone meeting their teenage mother, right? You know, going back and meeting their mother.
That's a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one to compare to. Yeah, I just didn't think about that.
Yeah, and then on top of that, all the stuff where characters from the 80s say something really problematic to a modern person and they react to it. You know, Final Girls had that as well, and then this also has quite a bit of that.
Yeah, I think like stuff like that, like those jokes sometimes can be like a little cringy, or it can be overplayed, but surprisingly, like a lot of it worked for me in this movie. And one thing I do think is kind of funny. Oh, what the? Someone just knocked something over. But one thing I think is kind of funny is, like, yeah, you're saying like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying that, like, it doesn't really feel like there's like that much stakes there in the movie. But I don't know. I feel like
there technically is, like, they're telling me there's lots of things going on with a murderer and like killing people and stuff, but I never really felt like it feels, I don't know, almost too lighthearted the whole time.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's fair because I think it is definitely more comedic than it is horror, which you know might not work as much for some people.
Yeah, but even something like Final Girls, which always felt like that as well. Like, I think the main character had an arc and they were going through a change, so it still felt like it had weight to it, even though it was being lighthearted. You know, it was still building up to her kind of like becoming who she's going to be at the end of the movie. And Kiernan Shipka, she's the best part of this movie because she's an engaging actress, but I don't know if I'd say her character really goes through a big change, or really, you know, she learns a few things here or there, but not a big.
I'd say she has an arc, for sure. I mean, whether or not you think that, you know, they successfully convey the arc, like, that's fine. Like, I can understand that, but I mean, I would say she has at least a little, you know, something that she goes through.
To be fair, I don't want to shit in this. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think it's a direct to streaming, like, just kind of okay movie that I think doesn't do anything to feel special. It never feels like it's staking its claim as like, oh, you're going to remember this is going to be something we talk about. It's going to be something that we remember as like a prominent movie. It feels like it's kind of a forgettable romp that's doing things that other movies have already kind of done better in the last, 5 years or so.
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't know if maybe one of the reasons why I'm a little more positive is just because I had pretty low expectations going in. I don't know. But I mean, I don't totally disagree with you. I had a lot of fun with the movie, but I mean, I agree it's not perfect by any means. It definitely does have that kind of streamer quality to it. But I mean, that being said, I've seen a lot of really bad, straight to streaming movies. I think this is definitely one of the better ones that you can watch.
Yeah, I guess it's just the standard of like what streaming movies are, and like the stuff that mostly goes straight to a service. Like, other than the odd exception, there's kind of like a feeling look to them. Because, she goes back to the 80s and everything looks just as pristine. Everything, they're all wearing the outfits and stuff, which, fair enough. They did a reasonable job with that side of things. Everyone's got hairstyles that feel right. But I'm like, do something fun. Like, how about when you go back to the 80s, like, you change to a more 80s looking type of movie? Like, change the visual style up a little bit. Do something interesting with the direction or something. I don't know. Like, just a little bit of style. I mean, for a movie called Totally Killer, it's it feels a little bit, I don't know, I don't know, basic in its style at times, I guess.
It's a basic bitch.
It's a basic bitch, yeah.
It's mid, as the kids would say, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the director. This director also did some just TV episodes and did a movie called Always Be My Maybe, which I think I remember that.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, that's I think that was Randall Park and Ali Wong
as well.
Yeah.
He's got a small role in this one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The director is Nahnatchka Khan. I think I'm saying that right. Nahnatchka Khan. So, yeah. Most of the TV work, but did that one movie, and does have another movie in pre-production according to IMDb. So, I mean, that's cool. That's cool that it's a fresh director that's kind of coming up and whatnot. But
it also helps to going into this movie if like the last 3 movies you watch were subspecies movies.
I mean, sure, it was better than those. I'm not gonna. I'm not crazy here. Like, that's the thing. I don't think it's bad. I think it's perfectly fine, but I just don't think it ever really excels beyond just fine.
I mean, we might have talked about this before, but I think one of the things that's kind of funny is when you have a movie that you think is just like fine or okay, I almost feel like you kind of have to defend it more because like people just kind of think that means that you hated it, you know. So like, you know, people are like, oh yeah, I can't believe Pete didn't like that movie. It's like, no, like I never said that I didn't like it, I just said it's fine, it's okay. Like versus where, yeah, if you have a very clear like, oh I loved it or I hated it, like, you know, people don't care as much. But yeah.
I think part of it as well is that when I talk about it feeling like a lot of the ideas are just overplayed at this point, it does kind of feel like that makes it lack a personality, or its personality is just kind of copied from other movies. So I just never like felt like it goes the extra distance to really sort of become his own thing, you know. Like there was lots of little moments I enjoyed in a vacuum or whatever, but I think it gets a little worse as it goes on. I think the third act gets a little bit rushed and messy, and we spend, you know, a lot of time doing the fish out of water stuff, a lot of time doing the jokes of her interacting with her mom and things like that.
It likes the middle of the movie because like the opening does feel like pretty rushed as well. Like it does feel like it's like all the stuff that's in the present feels like, you know, very quickly, all right, like, you know, here's this girl, like here's her relationship with the mom, and let's set the stuff up, and then yeah, like once she actually goes back in time, like that's when kind of the meat of the movie.
I didn't think it was too bad, except for the time travel part itself felt like just, oh, this is where okay all right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if people will have a problem with that, but like to me, I actually kind of liked that it didn't really spend a lot of time explaining it. It was just like, yeah, a time machine exists in the universe of this movie, like don't worry about it. Like that's not where the fun stuff is going to be.
I think my problem with it though is just how like out of nowhere it's kind of brought up. Like if they told me this character was like really cared about this and was like working on it, right, you know, and showed that it was like a passion project and like it really felt like a big deal to them, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Like, you know, when you watch Back to the Future, like you can call Doc Brown crazy and whatever, but he clearly believes in what he's doing, and this has clearly been something he's been working on for a long time. Whereas in this movie, a teenage girl just goes, yeah, I bought a time machine from a science fair project. And it's like, it's just kind of like flippant in a way that I think just feels weird to me. Like, you don't have to explain it. Like I'll accept in the tone of the movie that we're not taking it too seriously. We're just going to have a time machine. But I think yeah, there's definitely a level here where it's closer to like a hot tub time machine in terms of tone that I just don't really want, I guess. But I mean, maybe that's just a personal preference thing. But I would have just appreciated at least one other scene where she's like in a garage somewhere tinkering with things and like saying, oh, you're still working on that secret project, eh? It's like, yep, it's going to be ready soon, I hope.
Yeah, I would say like, yeah, it's not so much like the time machine that they have to set up, more that the character of the, you know, friend that built it. Like, yeah, if you set her up as being like this, you know, like a high school super genius who is like, oh yeah, like, you know, you're building another one of your crazy inventions, like, you know, like
it never even tries to tell us she's a genius.
Yeah, the
movie just paints her as like, oh, she's just a nice friend, that's all she is. Oh, but by the way, she built a time machine. Like, so I think that felt a bit rushed to me. But it's like, okay, whatever, that's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie is to get her to the past and then have fun with like that setting. and that's mostly like entertaining for a good while. But the more it kind of has to start to deal with the plot getting into like the third act, it feels like it's almost not interested in trying to actually make it feel like there's anything at stake, even though on paper there's a lot at stake. It never really feels like the tone shifts like appropriately to where, you know, I never really feel like Kiernan Shipka's character Jamie, I never really feel like she's like starting to get scared, like, oh, maybe this is going to fail, or maybe I won't be able to go home, or maybe this, or maybe that. It never feels like that to me, so it kind of felt a little bit just fluffy in the third act. But you know, people will probably have different opinions on that, but I want a bit more.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me that much when like, yeah, because I don't know, I feel like there's like, yeah, so much comedy now, which like also wants to have these like, you know, emotional beats and stuff, which I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, works for the type of movie and whatever, but it doesn't concern me too much if they're not like super concerned about doing that. In this case, I actually kind of think it's funny that, you know, instead of more of like worrying, it almost feels like she's more frustrated at how much, you know, these characters like are unwilling to listen to her, which I don't know, for me, I actually thought that was like pretty funny. Like the more frustrated she gets like with them like not following like her directions and stuff.
I think that's fine for a lot of the movie, but I just think there's a point where you have to turn up the dial a little bit. You have to make her take it a bit more seriously, so I actually feel that there's something. Like,
I think at the like I kind of I feel like at the end they do kind of try to do that, and that you do see like her get a little more emotional, but it is like kind of right at the very end. Like,
yeah, it's just not enough. It's too, but it feels like it's too concerned with not actually trying to provoke a reaction out of you, that it's playing everything very safe in a weird way, and the safer your movie is, the less interesting it is, typically, to be honest. So you know, that's kind of how I feel about it. If it feels like it's a very safe movie, then yeah, it's fine. Also, just one thing is it's relatively violent and there's a lot of stabbing with a knife, but the knife stabbing, when you get a good look at it, actually looks really bad, because it's clearly like the actor's obviously holding something and motioning towards like the other actor who they're stabbing, but the wound that's appearing every time is CG, and the way the knife kind of makes contact with the body just looks really weird. Like, and all I'm like, could you not have had a retractable knife that you know, the other movies for decades and decades have been using for this sort of stuff?
That's very weird, yeah.
And instead, it has this sort of weird thing where it's like almost clipping through the body, and it just looks like really fake. And I don't know, I didn't like that.
I really don't understand like obviously like CGI is like a very important tool, and it's like, yeah, you want to use that when there's stuff that you could never do in real life, like, you know, having a giant dinosaur like, you know, fall from the sky and eat your main character or something, like whatever. Yeah, like you're gonna have to use CGI for that, but like stuff like stabbing people and blood and getting shot, like, you know, we've been doing that for like since like the dawn of movies. You know, we don't need.
Here's the thing, Tim. It's cheaper. Makes the shooting quicker because you don't have to clean up blood to do a second take. You don't have to change the wardrobe. You can just do it again. And it's like, oh, we can just have people who are being underpaid. We're sitting at computers, VFX, you know, places, just churn it out for us after the fact. So it's a very lazy. It's about being cheap, and it's about being. I won't say the filmmakers are lazy. I'll say the studios are being lazy.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I kind of feel like is, you know, this is part of a lot of the current studio heads that we have that just like weirdly seem.
They want AI to replace the writers. Never mind, you know, this stuff with actual practical effects and people who can build that kind of thing.
Yeah. I forget like who I was listening to, but like I was listening to someone talk about it, and it was interesting how they're basically the point that they're making is how, you know, these CEOs of like, you know, these big huge movie studios like literally don't like movies, like because like back in the day, like you know, like I think like, you know, even like, you know, the very early founding of like Warner Brothers, where like, you know, there's a lot of stuff you could say about like, you know, how those people were not like good people and stuff, but at the end of the day, though, they did like movies, like, so they did have an interest in making, like, good movies.
Yeah, today, like, they're businessmen first, and maybe some of them happen to also be movie fans, but they're there because they're executives, because they're business people. That's what they're making decisions based on. Yeah.
Such a shame.
Yeah, it's all very dire.
I'm kind of curious about, like, what, because they're talking about how this was like a straight to streaming movie, and I was kind of surprised because we're obviously big in the well, it sounds weird if I say, like, we're big in the horror circle, but like we like we pay attention to horror news and everything.
They know our names, Tim. They all know our names.
But like, obviously we knew this movie was coming out, but I feel like I haven't seen a lot of people like talking about it. Like, usually, and I don't know if it's a thing now where it's like, oh, movie theaters are back and people are going to the movies now, so we're not paying as much attention to streamers again. Because I don't know, I feel like a year or two ago, like, obviously a very different situation then, when stuff wasn't coming out in the theaters, but like, I feel like there was a time where straight to streaming stuff would get a lot of buzz about it, like, and this would have been like a relatively big thing. I feel like people talk about, but
I'm going to say something that movie theaters are going to love to hear.
Oh,
right. Is that with the pandemic over, I think, not for everyone, I think there's some people who just don't care that much about movies beyond just a general sense that they don't care about what I'm about to say, but I think for a lot of people, when they went back to theaters and saw a big movie again, and we saw a lot of it this summer, Barbie did well, Oppenheimer did well, all this kind of stuff, I think there's much like back in the direct-to-video days, or even direct-to-TV when that was more of a thing, is that I think there's a prestige factor, and like the movies you see in the theater feel like a bigger deal, and I think to some extent we've kind of started to feel like that again a little bit, and I think streaming movies will always be a little lesser because they went straight to streaming. Now, sometimes that'll be unfortunate because every once in a while there'll be like an absolute gem where you're like, oh, it's a shame this didn't get released in theaters. And obviously there was a few in the pandemic because it was the pandemic. Prey, for example, last year, like, was definitely deserving.
What were they thinking?
I know, like that was made to be in theaters, and then it was just like a decision that was made later to make it just straight to, and that was all tied up in Disney buying Fox and all sorts of. There was a lot of context for that. It wasn't just like a thing, but so. I think I think what we're feeling now is that there is something just a little more prestigious about having your movie in the theater, and I think that it's probably good news for movie theaters that maybe not as many people who used to go to theaters will still be going, but I think enough of the people miss theaters and feel like the movies that go to theaters should feel like a bigger deal. So that's not to say you don't see some shit in theaters, because you do. I saw Expendables 4. That was the last movie I saw in theaters, and it was trash.
I swear, you must bring that movie up more on this podcast than you do on the actual episode you talked about it on. Because
it's left a scar, Tim. It's left a scar that can't be healed. So, anywho,
it's all right. Well, you got Exorcist Believer and to look forward to.
I mean, that's only if you can make it to the theater, and
Well, you had such a bad experience with Expendables. I don't want that to be your last theater experience. So maybe I'll try to make the effort to.
Tim, as crazy as this sounds, Saw 10 is getting way better reviews. It's the first Saw movie with a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes.
You're right. I hate to say it, but I am intrigued. I do kind of, maybe that might be the first one I'm going to see this month.
There's a morbid curiosity. Yeah. It did come out first, so we probably should try and see that first. As possible.
Oh, it's a long month. We'll try to squeeze it in, but it's a long month.
Anyway, I think there is kind of that prestige factor, and I think no, I'm still like, because the thing is, if you put this out in theaters, it would play just fine in theaters. I don't think people would be mad at it, but I do think there is definitely like a feel to these direct to streaming movies that I definitely like kind of recognize when I'm watching them, and I think I feel it with this one, even though this is definitely on the better end of them by and large. Like, there's definitely much worse, but there's so much like stuff that's just churned out for streaming. Like, I mean, did you watch Red Notice on Netflix? Did you watch Extraction? Did you watch any of these generic sounding ass movies that no one cares about, and then the weekend after they come out, like everyone forgets they existed? I remember the titles. I couldn't tell you what any of those were about.
I mean, that's the thing that like really depresses me is that there's such a short shelf life on pop culture nowadays. Where I mean, there definitely are the outliers, like your Barbies and whatever that people talk about for a long period of time. But yeah, I feel like there's so much stuff that's like, well, if you missed it the opening weekend, no one really cares or wants to talk about it anymore. I mean, especially for me, who rarely sees stuff that early anymore.
I think the movie has to fight for it. The movie has to like earn kind of that attention, I suppose, in a lot of ways. And obviously there's things like marketing costs and whatever that also goes into helping that. But I think a lot of, because there was a whole story a couple of months ago about how I think it was that some Netflix writers had been asked to put, I don't know how to phrase this. They were asked to write scripts in a way where there was less going on because a good percentage of people who watch Netflix watch it while they're doing something else. So they want the shows that are being made for them to be less engaging so that you can watch it and multitask, and there's less and like that's the point where like, okay, you're just farming out content. Like no one wants to write that. Like
that's like one of the most depressing like signifiers of like this era in entertainment. Like
I know. So it's much like it's the same with like stuff like The Room, right? Where that's amazing because it's unintentional. And I think likewise, there's a lot of movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s that are quite bad, that are very good as multitask movies where you can put them on and do something else while they're on. But as soon as you try to actually write them to be that, it's not going to work. It only works because they kind of unintentionally made movies that have bright spots but downtime in between, and you're kind of, oh, this is a great background horror movie or something. It doesn't work when you're... And I'm not saying they did that here. For a start, this isn't Netflix, so I'm not saying that this is guilty of that. I'm just...
It's so weird, though, to me, because it's like, well, that's when you put on, like an old show you've seen a million times, like The Simpsons or Seinfeld or something. Like, if you have to do the dishes, like, or, whatever. But...
Or dare I say a podcast.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Get the Streams After the Midnight playlist ready and get into it. Anyway, we should talk about spoilers. The spoilers for Totally Killer from henceforth. We should not talk about the movie. So the opening sets up a bunch of stuff. It sets up there was these deaths 35 years ago, I think they said. 1987. That's about right. And they set up that there's this true crime podcaster dude who gives tours in the town to where the murder victims were. And quite rightly, when he's given the tour and the fast food place that now is where one of the houses were, and the girl comes out and says, well, first of all, she offers them free food to all the people on the tour, but then she's like, it's weird, I don't really think of a serial killer having only killed 3 people. I usually think of at least 6. To which, and I thought this was a decent little line, actually. He hits back with, well, thank you to Janine for wishing there was more murdered people.
Yeah, that's a funny line.
It's okay. But the big thing is we're introduced to Jamie, our main character, and her relationship with her mother. Her mother feels quite conservative, and not in like a political way, but conservative in like a very playing it safe, doesn't want her daughter being in dangerous situations, doesn't like that the music she listens to is kind of aggressive. It seems like she's very, a bit prudish, maybe, you might say.
Which, I mean, makes sense. If you've been through this traumatic experience, you do want to make sure that, you're probably going to shelter your kids a little bit because, you'll be afraid a bit.
And this is the mum from Modern Family, we should also mention. This is playing the mother.
That's right.
So, very good.
Typecast much?
What, playing a mother?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of roles after a certain age for both sexes are either mother or father, to be fair.
Gotta change it. Hollywood, do better.
Okay. She'll be a spinster in the next one then. You happy?
Yes.
Okay. And then the dad is played by that guy from Freddy vs. Jason.
So that is my context as well.
Yeah. I've seen him in something else here or there, but that is primarily what I know him from. Where is he? Oh, he's 4th on IMDb. He's actually quite high up the list. What's he not? Oh, he's in Scary Movie. People know him from that, probably.
I want to say Dead Man on Campus was, which I don't even think is a movie I've seen. I think I just remember.
Oh Jesus, this guy works. I just clicked on him to see what else he's done, and he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's got 7 projects from 2023. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 projects from 2022. I'll stop there, but just to give you a sense of how much he's doing every year. So his list of credits is absolutely... It looks like a lot of direct-to-video shit and TV shows, to be fair.
Okay.
It's not like he's in big movies or anything like that, but he is... I mean, he's earning a paycheck somehow, some way.
God bless him.
Oh, The Christmas Note. He's done like a Hallmark Christmas movie. There you go.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Do you think he got in this because he's like, oh, you were in Freddy vs. Jason. You've got some horror like loyalty in you.
Oh, of course, yeah. Horror royalty for sure.
Yeah. I don't know why I said loyalty. I think I meant to say legacy rather than royalty. Loyalty, not royalty. That's your fault. You're mixing me up, Tim. How dare you? But yeah. So yeah, that was that's your famous horror cameo. But not really. So yes, but yeah, it sets up, the mum's scared because like our daughter's now the age she was when this all happened and all of her friends got killed and yada yada yada. But when Kiernan Shipka, when Jamie's out that night with her friend, the mum's murdered. The killer shows up after all this time wearing his mask. And this is probably the only scene in the whole movie that feels like just a straight horror movie scene to me. Because later on, like, there's always, like, more people around when the killer shows up, so it's more of, like, I don't know, almost, like, comedy of, like, fighting between lots of people and a killer. Whereas this is just, no, this is a killer stalking one victim and, like, showing up at the door, going around to the other side and popping up at the back door and stuff like that. That said, though, I did appreciate that the mum's got a bit of that, older Jamie Lee Curtis thing going on, where she's like, I've been preparing for your return my entire life. And, like, hits a button and, like, a gun falls out from, like, a shelf and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a pretty fun scene. It was nice to see her fighting back. And, what do you think about, like, the whole look and theme of the killer? Like... I don't know.
It's just kind of generic.
I guess it's okay, but
it's kind of how I feel about the movie. It's just kind of fine, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I would like to see more from, these kind of movies. It's like I feel like, and obviously, it's not as focused on the horror and the killer, but like I don't know, it'd be nice if they could, still try to like come up with something that would feel like a real franchise killer that you would see in like
it felt
a movie.
Really close to me to the Killer Mask and Happy Death Day, or even Valentine of all things, because that was also like a baby. That was like the stupid kind of face, but they all feel quite similar. It's all this plastic, just kind of face. Yeah.
And it's just like a weird and the thing is kind of like at least with some of those other movies, it might have more to do with the theming and stuff. But like I don't know, it was kind of like. All right, so it looks like a weird like 80s guy, but I don't know, what does that have to do with like the Sweet 16?
I mean,
theme of the killer.
If it was because it looks like one of those dead presidents masks, but if it was specifically a president, then maybe that'd have a bit of like, oh, it's Nixon. Look, the Nixon killer is coming around.
If it was like like the President's Day killer or whatever, then sure, like which is not a bad idea actually. But
yeah, I mean that could be something. It's funny though, because like. It's hard to come up with an iconic mask for a serial killer, and obviously some movies have done it. Like Halloween kind of just stumbled into this great idea of taking a Shatner mask and painting it white, and all of a sudden you've got this iconic, featureless face that really sticks out. The hockey mask for Jason. I thought they missed the beat. See, how like Freaky, that the whole point of that was that it was like Freaky Friday the 13th, and the killer was very inspired by Jason.
Yeah,
I thought they missed it because they gave him like a really crappy mask in that. Because obviously they couldn't actually make it look like Jason, so they gave him this just sort of generic thing. And I thought, surely if you want to do like, oh, we're doing kind of knockoff Jason, surely what you do is you give him a modern hockey mask, like the the sort of grid-like one that the goalies wear now, rather than the classic one. People are, okay, it's a hockey mask, but it's not that type of hockey mask. It's a modern hockey mask. I think that would be funny. I suppose it wouldn't hide his face as much because you can see through it, but still.
Yeah, or if like I don't know, if a hockey mask is like too close to Jason, if they did like I don't know, like a catcher's mask like from baseball or something like some other random sport.
Oh, that could work. Yeah, yeah. The umpire
Yeah.
mask, even. Yeah, yeah. Oh, the umpire. So yeah, the catcher. Yeah, the umpire just wears a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe he has like the padding that the umpire wears though, like the big chest padding.
That'd be.
And that way,
smart.
when someone stabs him at the front,
Yeah.
it's like, oh well, unless you've got a sword with the blade's really long, it's not happening. He's protected against 6-inch blades all the time, but not an inch more.
So it's like the next one we need to do is we need to do like some type of like baseball movie meets slasher, like what Angels in the Outfield meets.
Oh god, what's a good title? A slasher pun for a baseball movie. Strikes feels really obvious to go.
Well, there's like the 7th inning stretch. So what would be like the 7th inning wretch? I don't know.
The bottom of the 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 grave of the 9th. No, there's something in there somewhere.
We'll figure it out by the end of the show.
Anyway, and obviously it has to be like a baseball bat as a weapon. Although just to spice it up a little bit, maybe like some blades in it at the end or something, just to make it a bit scarier.
There is. I mean, we're tangenting all over the place, but I'd be loath if I didn't bring up. I think it was like there's a classic EC Comics. I don't know if it's Tales from the Crypt or another one of the other ones about. I think it was like a zombie baseball player or something that gets revenge on people that killed him, and then he makes like a baseball field, but it's like all out of like guts and intestines, and like the first base is like the person's liver or whatever,
Okay.
and like the lines leading through like to each base are like intestines and stuff, which is a powerful image that always stuck with me.
That's definitely R-rated if they ever do that.
Oh yeah.
just going to say that right now. Yeah. So, yeah, and we do get a little bit of sadness from like Jamie when she finds out her mum's dead, because obviously the mum does eventually go down, right? That's kind of what gets the plot all going. So we get to meet the teachers a little bit, which is important because we're going to meet the teenage versions of the teachers in the past.
One thing I do just want to say quick too, like so the mom dies, and then, all right, was the door completely closed or was it open a little bit?
No, it was ajar. It was
Right.
it was two trick-or-treaters didn't just open the door completely. Like it was kind of like already a little open, so they just kind of pushed it, and yeah. I mean, I thought it was a little weird that they kind of step in the house as if like
I would. Yeah, like trick or treaters, like just you move on to the next house. You don't go exploring.
But
for
the door was slightly ajar, and I'm assuming they kind of peeked, and because it was just straight down from the door, so I'm assuming they saw something that made them go, "We should probably check to see if there's something fishy here."
Yeah.
And sure enough, there's a dead woman stabbed 16 times.
My God.
I know. So we meet some of the teachers, and the principals like, try to talk to them about we're all here for each other, and then he turns it over to the football coach who's going to do some self-defense, and all he does is say, first thing you do is run, and then you sort of try and deflect the knife. Remember, avoid the knife, save your life. And then that was
he
it.
gave me a chuckle.
I got a chuckle out of it as well, but that was it. That was the whole thing. I was like, oh, okay, that was the self-defense class, was it? Okay. Run away and try and not get stabbed. That was his entire thing. Very good. Which I guess is at least a little funny, because it kind of pays off when he's been a dick to Jamie in the past, and she is able to use her actual self-defense training to like sort of pin him down, and everyone's like, "Whoa, how did you do that? You're a girl." So they kind of had a bit of payoff, and like you say, we meet Jamie's friend. I think we get introduced to her before the kill as well, but she's working on her time machine, and for some reason,
I think they're going. Are they going to like the concert or whatever? They do set up that she likes this band, Killer Instinct.
Yes, they're going to a concert. We never see the concert or anything like that. That's just happening while the mum's dying. But for some reason, the high school science fair is at the abandoned amusement park.
Yeah,
which is the most movie nonsense thing I've ever heard. But sure, they sort of explain it with oh yeah, the principal got it cheap because like it's a shitty piece of land, and I'm like, cheap or just no permission? Because it feels like you could have just done this without asking anyone, and no one would have said anything.
Also, you think it would just be cheaper to do it at the school? Like
that's what I would have thought. Do you not have like a big gym that you can use for these types of things? No. With the sports teams rebelling, saying no, you can't use our gym for the sciencey nerdy people.
Yeah.
Not having that. But she's built her time machine out of a photo booth. So she's trying to get it to work, and there's all sorts of lights and doohickeys, and it's like, oh, and I was like, she's just built a time. Okay, this is how that's going to happen. Fair enough. I'll just go with it. But we've already said our critiques on this introduction. And it's later that night where the killer attacks her. I will critique slightly the way the killer comes out is just kind of like abrupt and like you know, because she gets a little scared because her friend sneaks up behind. Well, it doesn't sneak, but just kind of like, you know, comes up behind her, and she gets a little bit of a fright, and then the killer just kind of pops up like 5 seconds later. It's a little bit weird, but he chases her into the booth, into the time machine, and stabs the control panel, which then makes it work because it wasn't working, and they basically just say that it was like an extra conductor, and that got it all working. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll go with it. But she gets sent back to the past, and it was set to the day of the first murder. So she arrives the afternoon, 1987, and there's people who are all walking around in 80s clothes, and so on and so on. And when she starts asking for like her mum's name, like, you know, where can she find her? She's like, well, she's probably in school, which is where you should be. Which probably led to my favorite like gag of the movie, and it happens twice. It's like a little running gag. That basically Jamie is like ready to like go on a rant to explain who she is and why she's there, and the receptionist at the school just does not give a shit and just believes the first thing she says, because she comes in and she's like, oh, I'm so and so, and I'm a foreign exchange student from Canada, and I should have this. And then the woman just says, here's your schedule, go to class. And she's like, do you not want to verify anything that I just said? She's like, verify? What is this, Fort Knox? And I think that gag was quite funny because it's like, it's poking fun at something, like things were a lot more easygoing, shall we say, once upon a time.
What's funny is that's like a very well observed joke, but it's also one that's not like super obvious. Like that's not the go-to thing that you'd think of when you're in the past. Like obviously, we're gonna make fun of clothes and like music and all that very obvious kind of stuff, but this was something that I was like, oh yeah, like that might not be something that you immediately think of, you know, the differences between now and then. And it's and I like it's like a little bit of a runner, like, you know, happens like you know, like 1 or 2 other times.
Yeah, she wants to find her best friend's mum later, and she goes up and says, hey, can you give me where this girl is, what class she's in right now? And then tries to start explaining why she needs that information, because obviously you don't just hand that out. And then she just hands her it. She doesn't care. Like, go find her.
Yeah, and it's like similar to like towards the end when she goes into that ride at the amusement park, and she's like, hey, like we're from the inspection place or whatever, and the guy's like, okay. I was like, oh, that's it. And
I'm like, they're teenage girls. Like, how? I mean, clearly he just wants any excuse to go for a break, but he just leaves them. And Jamie rightly points out, like, going on an airplane in the 80s must be wild, like compared to what we're used to now. I thought that was a good joke because it was kind of like her, like, being proactive and trying to prep a story, and then being shocked by just how little of it she actually needed. I thought that was like a more fun play on like how things have changed, as opposed to some of the more obvious stuff, like, oh, a dude's got a federal boob inspector t-shirt and stuff, and like, you know, there's a racist like team name for, you know, the school has for its football team or whatever it is. So, just stuff like that. Like those things are a bit more obvious. I almost wish they like had the balls to keep to the mum's kind of awful in high school kind of thing, because she goes into gym. That's her first class, and she sees all the girls who are murdered in the past, so that freaks her out. And then she asks, like, oh, where's so and so? Where's my mum? Whose name was it Pam? Yeah, Pam. And you know,
I was gonna say Molly, but that's the name of their group.
Yeah, the first thing the mum basically says to her is "F off and die," and she's like, and that's where the joke where Mom, see, that's where that joke comes in, and it's like, this could be really interesting. Like seeing just how, because I mean, Back to the Future kind of does this a little bit where the mum's different to obviously what Marty expects, but no, she was the bully, she was the shithead. Like, it feels like they maybe could have done a bit more with this. Instead, she just kind of softens up, maybe a little too easy as time goes on.
Yeah, I'd say these are probably maybe two of my bigger critiques of the movie. Is it's fine if you want to, like eventually have her become a good person, but there's no like there's no like story, reason, or motivation where that happens. It is literally just like, you meet her and then it's shocking to find out, oh no, she was like the class bully, she's awful. And then it is kind of just like a couple of scenes later, it's like, oh no, she's kind of okay, like she's not really that concerned about being mean anymore. And then also like they seem so like, oh, you're a loser, you're not going to be part of our group, and then it kind of is just suddenly part of the group. Like, it doesn't feel like she had to win them over or do something to prove herself. It's just like all of a sudden, like, all right, you're around, that's okay.
The only reason they keep her around after the first murder is that because she predicted it and she explains it as being psychic to them, they keep her around for that reason, basically. But it does just kind of feel like it's all a bit too easy. I think there's two things you can probably really do here. One is the Back to the Future thing, which is their influence, and this is a little bit different because they're not as awful, but the idea is that Marty's influence makes them better people. So when he comes back to the present at the end, he's actually, like, their offspring, their future generations actually been a good influence on the past generation, and that's kind of part of what the message of that movie is, right? That's part of what it's doing. And you could have done that here, but I think for that you have to actually have the mum have an arc, like, over the course of the movie, and I don't really feel like she does. No. Alternatively, it would have been way more entertaining and probably more unique if they just never listened to her and they never let her be. So there's a whole bit like early on in the past where she's trying to get into the house party and they keep not letting her in, and they're just constantly ignoring her. Like, if you're going to go down the comedy path more so, like, the idea that they're just never going to, and she's like having to deal with these assholes and constantly try and keep them safe despite the fact that they don't listen to her, they don't want her help. So it's this sort of like trying to always be there to intervene, but them making their life difficult and not going along with it. Like, that could have been funny to just keep to that the whole time. And the idea being that she basically does the thing she was there to do, which is, well, she's not even really there to do anything, but like once she's there, she's like trying to stop the murders because, she might as well, I guess, because maybe that'll save her mum in the future. But it never, I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing where it doesn't really do completely either. So as a result, I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I also like the idea of like, which they didn't do this a ton, but I thought it was interesting where I don't feel like you don't see this a lot in time travel movies where you cut back to the future and see like how the people in the future are also trying to, figure out what's going on, because you get the podcast guy is starting to get like, these facts and stuff that he's supposed to be an expert on. All of a sudden it's like, oh wait, no, this person died here instead of here, but he like recognizes like something weird is going on, and then like she can kind of play with that and like leave like little notes and stuff to them in the present to like know what's going on, but which is an interesting idea, but then I feel like they kind of quickly dropped it.
It's an interesting idea, but honestly, I think the way they do it just raises too many weird like questions, because it's like, wait, so he kind of remembers the original timeline, and they try and explain it as that's what the Mandela effect is that it's remembering what the timeline was, but it's actually changed and it's always been this way now, but you remember it being this other way. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but they don't really go back to it. It's only really a couple of scenes. If they went back to it more and we saw them like completely like change like what they think, like, I don't know, like I feel like there was probably more inventive things you could have done with the idea that for the characters in the present day part of the timeline, that their past keeps changing in little ways that kind of crop up as problems, and maybe that they're debating something, and then all of a sudden they sort of like just ignore it because all of a sudden that debate's meaningless because the past changed. Like you could have maybe done something more with that, but maybe I'm asking more of like a hardcore sci-fi movie at that point to actually play with that. But
right, yeah.
As it is, it just kind of feels like, okay, you're having your cake and eating it too, because they kind of remember stuff, and she's still trying to fix the time machine, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, I feel like the time travel rules in this movie are just whatever the movie wants them to be, so they can do what they already decided they want the scenes to be. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
As opposed to they came up with a set of rules and then stuck to them.
Yeah. The one rule that I did kind of like that I thought was interesting though, and I think you kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the show, is I like that it wasn't like Back to the Future where it's like, oh, if your parents don't get together, like you'll just kind of start to fade away and like cease to be. And I think that she explained it like, oh no, it would be like you'll still exist, but it's just like you'll return to the future and like you won't be there. Like you'll just be this kind of like weird like anomaly or something.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, I think, but
it's an interesting idea. I'm of two minds about it because, like I say, like I think that gives Back to the Future a lot of urgency. And like immediate personal stakes, which I think would have been fine here because the personal stake would be, oh, I'm trying to like change the past so my mum won't be murdered in 35 years. Like it could be about that. I don't know, for some reason it just feels like they don't really emphasize it enough. Like that's what she's trying to do the whole time. I really could have felt just a bit more impactful, but I mean, one of the big things we need to mention as well is that when she finds her best friend's mum, she so I think Lauren's the mum's name. Yeah, Lauren's a teenage mum, and she had the designs for time travel, which is what her daughter was working from in the future. And she actually, like, Jamie just tells her, I'm from the future, here's a smartphone. And she's like, is this the time machine? And but it explains everything to her and shows her where the time machine is because it came back to the past with her. Because her daughter in the future is building a new time machine out of a arcade machine. It's one of those like sit down arcade machines she's building a new one out of. So that's all fine, but that's like a whole running thing, is that she kind of just knows the entire time that she's from the future and she's trying to help her get, but she's effectively the Doc Brown of the movie. And I thought they were going to do more interesting things with that. I thought, like, because at the end of the movie when she goes back to the past and she like sees everyone again, like the best friend's mum's like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And she's like, hey, here's all the things that I think changed for you based on what I knew when you came back in time. And they're like, they're hugging and they're like friends, and I'm like, it would have actually been really sweet if they had actually really become good friends in the past, and now it's this weird thing where she's like also best friends with her best friend's mum. But I feel like they never really like did that much together or built like a camaraderie, or I really felt like they bonded over that time period.
I mean, yeah, I feel like there's like literally scenes where it's just like, all right, I'm gonna go work on the machine now. See ya. Like, yeah,
it felt very separate. Like maybe they could have saved each other a bit more, or like been there for each other, or maybe even just had a heart to heart like at one point where, in fact, that's what would have done great for the movie's like stakes and emotional side as well. Is if there's just one scene where Jamie's starting to worry that she's not going to be able to solve it, and maybe she breaks down and cries, and like it's it's this like, other character Lauren who's there to like comfort her. Maybe they bond, and maybe that's like the seed that you can then use to say, okay, they've had tough times together, so we feel more when they reunite in the present day, and she's now like almost 50, and Jamie's back from the past, and that could have felt a bit more impactful. As it is, like when they start hugging at the end, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess her now in a way that you didn't before, which is interesting, but I never really felt like you became friends. You were just kind of like begrudgingly helping her. More than I don't know. It was feeling lacking in that respect, but
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's a whole house party. The first girl dies, kind of as planned. It's not in the same location though. Basically, because Jamie's interfering, things are starting to change. So they spend a whole bunch of time trying to get in, including they end up working a little bit with the young version of the principal from the future, who's like this nerdy guy that all the other people make fun of. There's a jock who's actually the coach from the future, who's there as well. Obviously, this is where Jamie's dad shows up, and he's like this young hunky guy in the backstory and all the rest of it. So yeah, which I'm actually realizing now, that whole Mamacita joke is actually just taken from Back to the Future.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
because
well, not the literal, it's not the same line, but he says dad and then he goes daddy-o.
Oh, okay.
That's literally in Back to the Future in the first scene where he talks to George. Well, it's not the first. It's not the first scene. Sorry, it's when George is saying that he can't, kiss Lorraine or something like that, and he's like, "Come on, Dad." And he's like, I mean, Daddy-o. Yeah. Yeah. It just clicked there when I was talking about her dad. I'm like, no, that line was in Back to the Future. That wasn't just him that said that earlier in the review. That was a thing in the movie.
Interesting. Yeah.
So even you're ripping it off, you hack.
Yeah, if you can't steal from the best.
Fair enough. So anyway, the lesson to learn here is that if you don't do blowjobs, you're probably going to get killed. That's the lesson the movie teaches you.
So this is like a. So I thought the blowjob jokes, like, they were funny, but also like
I didn't get it because I didn't understand which. Like, so the joke is that the one of the mean girls, right, who are called the Mollies because they're all Molly Ringwald fans, which makes sense given the time period, and they all dress like different Molly Ringwald characters. The one who dies first, who is an actress who was in something else in the last couple of years, I can't remember, but the one who dies first, she calls something else a beige, right? Or no, a BJ, sorry. Beige is later. Someone says later they're going to give they're just going to this location to give a casual beige, and that gave me a chuckle because I've never heard a BJ or a blowjob called a beige. But yeah.
I think it's funny because she was doing it in like the House of Horrors or
yeah, it was
like
the haunted dollhouse or something like that. Yeah, at the fairground. And then she justifies it by saying, well, if anyone walked in on us, well, if you're going to go into a house of horrors, you can't complain that you saw something nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
logic.
This first victim refers to something else as a BJ. And she says that in front of the guy she's with, who is the one who's going to be the lead singer in the band that Jamie likes when she's, older or in the future. And he says something like, oh, I hope you've got room for one more. Because she says, like, oh, I've had too many BJs or something like that. And she's going to the bathroom. I think she's talking about her drink. Or maybe she calls it BJ. And she goes, no, I don't do blowjobs. Your pee comes out of there. And this becomes like a running thing where it's brought back up later where they're talking about it. And that's why I said that joke about someone says, oh, just think if she gave blowjobs, she'd probably still be alive.
Yeah.
And, Jamie's like, that shouldn't be the lesson here. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, so like I don't know. I think it's like, the joke is perfectly fine. It's funny, but like the thing that kind of confused me about it is like it almost seems like they're implying like, oh yeah, like no one gave blowjobs in the 80s because of this reason, and I was like, is that a thing? Like, I don't know.
Well, no, because the other girl also gives blowjobs. That comes up later. That's hence the whole thing about her giving someone a blowjob in the haunted house of dolls or whatever it was.
Yeah,
but I actually do. No, to be fair, I think this is a real thing, that it is typically more common now that people give blowjobs than it was in the... I think there was a significant higher portion of people in the 80s and further back who just said they wouldn't never do it, I think.
Okay.
So when people say the good old days, no, more people are willing to give blowjobs now. It is objectively better than the past.
Yeah, why not?
Objectively better. That's just straight facts. Yeah, but no. Yeah, I think that is definitely a thing. I mean, obviously, it still happened. I'm not saying no one did it, but
I'm not aware. So,
but I think this attitude of, oh, that's gross, that's where pee comes from. I think that was definitely a thing for more people.
Yeah,
in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
I did think it was kind of funny, the joke of like because of what happened with this first murder, it changes the like lead singer from like, he was like, it seemed like this hardcore like metal band or something, and then because he comes close to the killer, now he's an emo guy in the future, and he named himself after the was it like a waterbed away or something?
He does like sad music now, instead of like hair metal or whatever he was before. Yeah, that was an interesting little change. So
now one thing I wanted to ask too is, what did you think of like the gimmick where, when she sees someone in the past, like it does this like whoosh to the like shows them what they look like in the future, and then like goes back? Because in theory, I think that's a kind of like a cool concept, but I don't know, it seemed kind of cheesy the way they did it. Like
yeah, I think my two thoughts on it are, one, it is at least a quick way of just making it clear to the audience this is who this person is, without her having to say, oh, it's the principal from my day. Like, it's just quickly, you get this little flash and you know who it is. So I appreciate it as a shorthand. I will say the sound effect and the way it did it made me think of I don't even know if it's a specific video game, but there's definitely a video game where it does that. Not specifically goes through time necessarily, but the way it flashes and then comes back, it was making me think of, maybe it's Life is Strange or something like that.
Oh, Perfect Dark.
It's not. Why would it be a first-person shooter, Tim?
I don't know.
Come on, be serious. Take things seriously.
Sorry.
Okay. We're here to critique films, all right? Not make weird jokes. No one remembers Perfect Dark. It's an ancient video game, Tim.
What? I feel like it came out just yesterday.
In 1996. So yeah, after this, she basically sticks around the group and they agree to go somewhere, and she says, let's go to, one girl says, let's go to my family's condo in the city. And she's like, yeah, that's a great idea. The city, populated, not the cabin in the woods, because that's where the second murder was going to happen. And then when she wakes up after the trip, it's a cabin in the woods, because the girl's an idiot and doesn't know what a condo is. Which, honestly,
it's funny.
I don't have much to say about all the antics at the cabin necessarily, other than just eventually they kick Jamie out for ruining the fun. And she spends a lot of time trying to like knock on windows and climb in, and witnesses some murders here or there, and all the rest of it. Actually, here's a question for you, Tim. Did you, like, if you did figure it out, at what point in the movie did you realize it was two different killers?
Oh, well, I don't think I figured out it was two different killers, but pretty early on, I figured out that it was going to be the principal, aka the nerdy guy. I think pretty early on, like at that party scene, just how much he was trying to get into the party and getting rejected.
They telegraph it way more than that, actually. See, a little bit later when they're at the van, and because there's this like red herring character, this like kid who's a bit quiet and they all think's a bit dangerous, because one of the motives they think it might be is that the girls were all mean to this girl they called Fat Trish, and she died in a car accident, and that was this weird kid's sister, and maybe he's doing it all out of revenge. And when they investigate him and they check his van and stuff, he's just got a bunch of video games. He's innocent and harmless. But the young principal shows up and says, what are you guys doing? I'm here to keep you safe or something like that. And that was the moment I went, okay, well, you're the killer. But very quickly, when it went back to the present day and the podcast guy was like asking questions about the time machine and stuff, I was like, you're also striking me as a killer. So lo and behold, it turns out the killer in the past is the principal, but the killer in present day is actually the podcast guy. And eventually he steals the second time machine and goes back in time to try and do more killings in the past.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all straightforward. It's all easy. It's simple enough. What do you want for? But yeah, anyways, so the second victim actually ends up changing. It's wrong. It's actually the one who was meant to be the third victim, I think, who becomes the second victim. And the second victim's still alive, who shits herself when Jamie at the police station just casually says, she was meant to be next. And she's like, what? I was meant to be next? But yeah, I don't like, there's a lot of running around, there's a lot of stabbing going on, there's a lot of fighting. Like a lot of the characters get involved and at least at one point or another fight the killer during this sequence. Because it's all over the house.
I would even really mention to the daughter of the sheriff, who is the sheriff in the present day.
Honestly, yeah, we've not mentioned her one shit, and it's probably because her character is just kind of
doesn't have much to do.
Yeah. Like they set up that she's kind of this mean cop in the present day who's just kind of unlikable, and then we see her as a teenager, and she's the daughter of the sheriff in the 80s, and she's just kind of there. She has some like jokes about being stoned or whatever, and that's kind of it. That's the whole character. There's not much to her other than that.
I feel like they could have done something like maybe show why she's such a hard ass in the future, or something. But yeah, it seems like a very just throwaway character. There isn't much there.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And it's weird that she's like part of the group, but she's not like one of the murder victims. So it's like,
yeah, she's not one of the Mollies, and we eventually find out why why Jamie's mum wasn't killed with the others. It's because this was a revenge thing for Fat Trish, but it wasn't her brother. It turned out that the young principal was dating her, and he wanted revenge for her and blamed them for getting her drunk and sending her in a car. Which, to be fair, Jamie also has a problem with this when they eventually sort of like mentioned that, yeah, we got her drunk and then sent her away. Like Jamie's like, you got this girl killed. Like, you did this to her. You put her in a car drunk, and that's when the jock character's like, what? I'm a better driver when I'm drunk, and she's like, no, you are not. Like, I'm guaranteeing you right now, you are not.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty funny joke. Like, it's a pretty dark joke, but I thought it was funny the way that they were like, so did not see themselves as like killers at all. And she was like, no, you definitely like caused her death. And like, I don't think so. Like, not really. Like, we just like invited her over and got her drunk and then told her to leave. And, like, it's like, no, you are absolutely responsible.
Yeah. Maybe don't deserve to be brutally murdered, but you definitely have to answer for this in some way or fashion. Yeah. You know, this is a real thing. So basically from here, like, they have a plan where they eventually want to try and lure the killer at the fairground and try and get him. And like, this stuff's all a bit rushed to me. Like, honestly, the details are very hazy, other than just they're going to put the next victim as bait, where in her blowjob spot where she takes guys for blowjobs. And basically the killer's going to show up, but they're all hiding in this house of horrors with weapons, like, ready to strike. And sure enough, eventually the killer comes out, and there's a bit of a fight, there's a bit of a struggle, and they kill the killer, and they take off the mask, and it's the young principal, and it's like, oh, well, I guess that's that then. It's like, okay, fair enough. Which, I think one of the weird misgivings of all this is that we've cut back to the present day a couple times, and I thought it was really weird that after we find out the principal was the killer, that we never cut back to present day to, like, just see him in present day knowing that he's the killer. Because when Jamie comes back to the present at the end of the movie, because he died as a teenager when he was the killer when they killed him, it means he isn't around in present day anymore, and the coach guy is actually the principal, and that's fine, like, that makes sense. But it felt weird that you're saying, hey, that principal who was giving a speech at the start of the movie to everyone and try to calm the students down, he was the original killer. It felt weird not to, like, get a scene with him in present day where we can see him on his own, or something where you see him kind of, like, openly, like, wonder why there's another killer, or something. Like, it felt like such a missed opportunity or plot thread to me.
Well, because they kill him in the past, so he wouldn't be in the future, though.
No, I know at the end, but I'm saying we could have found out. I don't know. We could have still seen him in the present day before he fades away or something. I don't know. Like, I thought it was strange that we never get, like, to see what it was like him having this past of being a serial killer, but he's the principal of a school in present day. Like, we never get to see him in that context, and I just thought that was a bit of a weird missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's another fault of maybe not fully knowing how the time travel works in this, because, like, yeah, would it be just like him just going about his normal day, and then all of a sudden starts fading away or something, or would he have just never existed, so it never would have gotten to that point?
Or just do a flashback set before, like, in the present, where before he would be disappeared because he get killed in the past. Like, show him, like, reacting, like, this is the perfect scene. You do a flashback to him, like, hearing the news that someone's been killed by the Sweet 16 killer, and have him be like, huh? But that was me. I didn't kill anyone last night. Like, that could have been something, Yeah. So it turns out Jamie's mom's been worried that the killer's going to come back for all this time, and the podcast guy claims that she got a note after the murders saying you're going to be next someday. But it turns out that wasn't something the mum saw back in the day. That was something that the podcast guy made up himself to show to Jamie. So the mum never knew about this note because it didn't exist. It was fake. But anyway, just as they're trying to leave, they've turned the ride at the carnival into a new time machine. I don't even know what you call this ride in general, but it's a
quantum drop, I think is what they call it here.
well, yeah, that's the name in the movie, and every version of this ride you've ever seen's got its own name, but I don't know what the name is. Just like, like a roller coaster's a roller coaster. I don't know what you call this thing, but every carnival or fairground you ever went to has probably had one of these things.
Yeah, it just like spins around really fast, goes up and down, kind of.
I don't think it goes up and down. That's why. I think it's just a spin in circles, isn't it? Where you're all up against the wall, you're all up against the outer wall, and it spins.
I mean, if it's the kind of ride that I'm thinking of, because like we used to have like back home we'd have like a little carnival fair thing every year, and the way we had it kind of work is like it starts spinning you around, but then eventually it also goes like up and down. So I assumed it was kind of that kind of ride as well, especially because it's called the quantum drop. So I figured there has to be some type of drop in the ride.
Oh, and that's fair. But I think the ones I've seen in the past have only ever just spun around. But yeah, you may be right.
You don't really see it in action, so I don't really know.
Yeah. I mean, you see people at the end of a ride like getting out of it, but you don't really see like from the outside when it's turned on, so you don't really know what it's doing. But the killer shows up, and we get this big over the top fight where the time machine's starting, and Jamie's been told she has to stay in the middle of the circle, otherwise she'll get obliterated by the time force or something on the outer part of it. So
you pretty much know what's going to happen to the killer.
Yeah, the killer just turns into a red mist of CG when he gets kicked into it. Obviously, there's a little bit of like him being like, "Yeah, I'm killing more people because my livelihood's this podcast, and it's there's only 3 murders. Like, it's hard to keep that going." I'm like, "Yeah, how have you been doing a weekly podcast about 3 murders that happened?" Like, that's.
Well, you know what people usually do in that situation is they usually go on to a different murder.
Yes, yes. But he has got the one murder he wants to focus on, so he's making new victims to keep his show interesting. Wasn't that
isn't like a bad premise for a killer? Like,
yeah, wasn't that a thing? Was it Mexico or South America, maybe somewhere? Like maybe a decade ago or something. There was like a news reporter who was found guilty of like committing murders so that they could like report the news of it. Like they'd have all.
That's wild. I don't think I've heard of that.
They'd have all the script. I can't remember what country it was. It may have been like. I don't know. I don't know. Either Mexico or South America, somewhere south of the US, but I don't remember the details. But it was basically like, he always seems to get to the crime scenes first. That's funny. That. I just vaguely remember hearing about this. I'm sure people can Google it and see the facts, but.
I thought it was kind of funny when his dad is like, this big, famous reporter. So obviously he feels like some resentment towards that. And then towards the end here, he's like reporting, from the carnival, and he just kind of like the modern day killer that's now back in time. He just like runs right by him and just stabs him in the head.
Yeah. When he reveals who he is, Jamie says, "Wait, you just killed your dad out there." I was like, "Yeah. He was a terrible dad. I hated him. I always had to live up to who he was and failed miserably." Yeah, they set up the dad at the start because he's still a reporter in present day. Like, he's still this famous Pulitzer Prize winning journalist in present day. So when we go back in time, and it's like, no, he's still a TV reporter, just maybe lower down the down the ranks, as it were. But yeah, so they set that up, and then it's weird we didn't even mention that yet. There's a lot of little things like that in this movie that feel like they're setting something up to be a bigger deal, and then it isn't. Like I thought because Jamie's dad was a fan of this like reporter, right? Because we see him watching him on TV at the start of the movie. I thought, oh, because he's dead now, we're going to maybe see like how that influence or lack of influence has maybe affected something. And the dad is like different at the end. He's wearing a suit. He seems a bit smarter, but I don't think it's like a direct correlation to that or anything.
Yeah.
I thought you'd maybe see, okay, we're going to see a news report on TV at the end, and it'll be someone else giving it, and it'll be maybe someone we recognize or someone who was in a different position at the start of the movie. Or, I don't know, like something, but it felt like it was just kind of like, I don't know.
I didn't really feel it while I was watching the movie, but when you really sit down and like talk about it and break it down, the movie does feel maybe a bit overstuffed, which like, yeah, there's like a lot of like little things that it's like, oh, that felt like it would be something like, we're talking about, the sheriff's daughter, or yeah, there's like, little tidbits and stuff that we're bringing up here and there, that it's like a lot of stuff that just ends up kind of being nothing, which
yeah, there's a lot of things that I thought that we'd see, like how they've changed when she gets back to the present day, that just never come up. The one big thing, of course, is that she's got a brother now who's older, because the parents got together earlier. And maybe this is maybe like a little sweet message, is that, because the dad says early on when they're mourning the mother's death, he says, me and your mum didn't get together in high school, we got together after college, and it's probably good that we did, because we probably wouldn't have lasted if we tried to be together when we were young and stupid. And the twist, well, not twist, but the outcome at the end of the movie is that no, even though Jamie kept trying to stop them from being together after she accidentally like puts it in their heads that they should hook up, the little reveal is that no, they got together and it did stick. But because they got together years earlier, they ended up with another kid who they named Jamie. So now Jamie's now Colette in present day.
Which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that was amusing. That was like a change you couldn't have saw coming.
But I mean, that's kind of an interesting premise too, because it is like the opposite of Back to the Future, where instead of like having to get your parents together, you have to keep them apart. But again, it's like it never
amounts to much.
It doesn't do much.
I think again, it's that thing. If they emphasized it a bit more, where it's like she's trying to keep them apart because she believes that if they get together, they won't last and she won't be born. But like, I feel like that could be a really big sweet ending if she gets to the present and finds out no, their love was real, it was strong no matter when they got together, and it didn't matter ultimately in the end. That could be a really nice heartfelt ending, really. But I don't think they don't emphasize it enough at the end. Like when she comes into the house and they're there and they're both fine and they're just happy to see her, and they're wondering why she's got like a bloody nose because she was in a fight with a serial killer. She doesn't say that, obviously, because that's hard to explain. They like, I was like, why isn't she asking, like, or maybe saying something that would make them say, oh no, yeah, like, maybe she would say, hey, when did you guys get together, or something, or remind me again, like, what's the story of you two meeting? And maybe we'd hear how it changed, or hear how, oh yeah, we got together in high school, but it was a bit rough for a while, we broke up for a bit, but we got back together again because we really loved, they could have really punctuated it by saying this is how it's changed and this is how they still kind of came through it. Instead, it's just kind of like there, and it's not really, which by the way, there's also a paradox in this, because Jamie leaves her mother's jacket for her from the future, and that's how she has the jacket, which begs the question, where did Jamie's mother originally get the jacket in the first timeline?
Good question. I didn't think about that.
Yes, so yes, I consider that. And what's so weird is that she actually, at the end, when she's going back to the future, she actually takes the jacket off and says, hey, give that to my mum for me. And I'm like, why do you think you have to give it to your mum? Your mum will get it however she got it originally.
Yeah.
That's just all a bit odd. Yeah, it also, I mean, the one issue Back to the Future kind of has, it's a damn near perfect movie, but it's like, don't the parents recognize that their son looks the same as the guy that they knew when they were teenagers, and that doesn't really come up here. I think it's more glaring here a little bit because the best friend's mum does know her and does recognize her and says, hey, we went through those adventures together and you're finally back to the present day. I'm like, did the parents not remember? Especially since it's not like she just like casually interacts with them. Like, she gets involved. She's this annoying voice in their ear saying, hey, you're in danger, stop having a party. Like, she's around and pestering them for like ages. I always appreciate when characters come up with plans to try and be proactive, to try and like deal with the scenario they're in. But I think the killer is relatively kind of toothless, that I don't think I ever felt like much fun in the okay, this is the plan to try and track or catch him or try and kill him. I don't know. I never felt that much of an excitement from it. And I think the entire third act does suffer a little bit from feeling rushed, from feeling the stakes aren't high enough, and feeling like the everything means a bit more. And I'm not saying everything I've suggested needs to have been done to make the movie better, but like any number of them would have been maybe an improvement, or if not the way I've suggested, then certainly just something to create the same connection that I wanted to care about what was going on.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think there's definitely stuff to, there's gripes to be had, but, I don't know. At the end of the day, I thought, like, maybe I'm a little more lenient with like comedic stuff than I am like horror or sci-fi stuff that I just can let some stuff go. But like, yeah, like I do think the movie does like mostly work despite a lot of these faults. Like I think it's still enjoyable and like an easy enough watch that um I don't know. It's, I hate to say like, yeah, you want to shut your brain off or whatever, but yeah, a lot of the stuff you just have to like not think too hard about it, just go with the movie.
It's just fine, and I think people say, "What do you want?" It's just a light-hearted thing that's poking fun at these things, and yeah, but look, Happy Death Day.
Light-hearted things get like don't get the 10 out of 10s.
Well, no, lighthearted. That's not the point I'm going to make at all. Happy Death Day is a great example to compare this to, because Happy Death Day is the funny stuff. It is the high concept sci-fi thing mixed with a slasher movie. But more importantly, it does have solid rating because it has a solid character arc. And that's where I look at it and say, this is much better than this. And this is why. It's because it has the good writing and the good character story on top of all the fun ideas. So being fun simply just isn't enough if and that's not to say you can't have fun. It's not like when I watch like Commando, I'm like, oh, where's the subtext in Commando, or where's like not at all, right? Like obviously you can, but I think if it was going to be fun on a very just B movie level, then I need better kills. I need more memorable characters. I need more funny moments. I need more playing with the tropes. I need more just I don't know. There's too much of it that just feels a little bit mild, right? It's a mild movie. That's my ultimate review of it. It's mild. Anyway, I think we're at the point where we're rating the movie. So Tim, what are you giving Totally Killer?
I think
Alright, let's go quiet for a minute while Tim's theorizing.
I think I'm waffling between like a I think I'm waffling between like a 7 and a 7.5. I actually did like it quite a bit. Maybe I'll just go with the straight 7. Because yeah, as we talked about, there was definitely a lot of faults to bring up. But I do think when you actually watch the movie, that not as much of that stuff matters. It is just like a funny movie to me. I do agree. Yeah, the horror and stuff isn't much there. That could have been played up a lot more, but. I don't know. It still worked for me. I think it's just I had fun with it. I think the characters are pretty likable. The jokes work, which I'm probably coming at it at more of a comedic angle than I am like a high concept, horror or sci-fi angle, which there's probably a lot more to be desired on that. But other than that, though, I think it's a pretty fun, enjoyable time, and works for as straight to streaming movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that sentence though, I don't like that. Like it works for a straight to stream movie. If that's all it is, then it's not good enough, frankly. So
well, I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10 or anything. So
I know. I'm just like like I would rather a movie just be really bad so I could be passionate about it than something just be okay, and that's where I feel this kind of falls. So.
Well.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get
to having this discussion again very soon.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get more really bad soon. Like, I don't doubt it, but it makes it like almost a more frustrating one to talk about. Is that it's like saying it's perfectly fine, but also here's all the reasons why. Sometimes it's hard to say why something isn't just better than it is. If they're not making glaring, obvious mistakes, and it's not just got lots of really, really bad things. It's just kind of in the middle. It's just okay and nothing more.
I mean, those are the hardest movies I feel like to talk about. Like it's very easy to talk about why a 2 or a 3 out of 10, like why it's so bad and stuff. And it's also really easy to sing the praises of something that's like an 8 or a 9. But I feel you though. Like I know it's hard to kind of. Yeah, I mean, we did a pretty good job talking about it, I feel like. But yeah, sometimes those more mid movies, it's like, you just don't have as much to say.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably going with. I'm deciding if it scrapes a 6 or if I'm just settling on a 5.5. I think I'll go with a 6. I think I'm hesitant because I don't like that it averages out between us to a 6.5, but I can't do my rating based on what the average is. I can't lowball it just to bring the average down. That's unprofessional, so I won't do it. But
it's like insider trading. Like, you can go to jail for that.
I'm gonna go to podcast jail.
Yeah.
For rating a movie as such. But yeah, so that's the movie. That's totally killer. I mean, if you got Prime, it's on there. You can watch it, and you'll forget about it in a couple of weeks. It's actually empty calories. That's what I'm going to describe this movie. It is empty calories.
Those are the best calories, though. Those are so tasty.
It's mediocre empty calories.
Yeah. Let's hear from our loyal freaks that listen to the show. I'm interested to hear what they thought of it. If you want to sound off in the comments, because like I said, like I haven't really heard many people talking about, so I don't know if if I'm wildly off base here, if the people hated this movie, or if they're more in line with Pete or whatever, or if it is getting positive feedback. I don't know. I haven't heard much, so people want to comment or hit us up on our socials, let us know. Or hey, maybe it'd be a fun might be fun for people to talk about it on the Discord, if there was a way for them to join that.
Oh, there's a link in the description, by all means. Look at you promoting the Discord.
There you go.
Although the main thing I'll promote is patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can get bonuses. You get bonus episodes. They are back from Screams After Midnight, and there's bonuses for the other shows on there, so please go check it out and see if you are interested. But it helps keep the content coming, helps keep the lights on, and continues the journey that is Screams After Midnight. So thank you very much for joining me. It has been a pleasure. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.